We all set back there?
Yes, sir.
All right, good morning, everyone. This is the continuation of the May 24 meeting. It is June 1. And I would like to call the roll, gentlemen.
Bill Kirkbride.
John Goggin.
Dan Hughes.
Ed Lombard.
Tim Steele. Brian Thomas.
We have a quorum. We're all here with the exception of Dick Cody, excused absence, and the Honorable Ray Murphy is here, and the interim director, Craig Steinhoff. And I'm sorry, I forget. Yeah, yes, okay. Will you all please stand and join me in the pledge? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, the republic for which it stands, one nation. We have the minutes of our, this is the minutes of the February 8 meeting. Any comments or corrections on that?
I just say, I think that date's incorrect, right? There's some, aren't these amendments from the May 24th meeting? Yes. Okay.
Yeah, they are.
Sorry, what was that?
The minutes show that it's from Monday, February 8th, but the actual date of that meeting was May 24th.
Yeah, that's what,
Yeah, because item 3 is the approval of February 8th.
Right.
yeah. Good guess.
Did we approve the May 24 minutes, the last meeting?
We approved the February 8 meeting minutes at the last meeting.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay, so this, up at the top here, where it says Monday, May, should be the, May 24.
Correct.
We're amending the agenda to approve the minutes of the, no, the agenda's right. May 24.
Yeah.
Okay.
You have an agenda?
Yeah.
I don't have an agenda.
I have one.
Clarification.
I think it came out on an email, didn't it?
Yeah, I printed it and then I didn't bring it in. Okay. Well, anyway, we have the minutes of last Tuesday. Any corrections or additions?
Chairman, can I just ask a question, or maybe this has already been, we were just given minutes of the February 8 meeting, but that should be the May 24 meeting, is that the idea? Okay. It should say May 20.
That's a mistake up at the top, yeah. And
I move, we accept, although I had to read them very quickly, just sort of glanced through them, but I think I saw all the highlights. I move.
I have one change to it. It says that I question the current configuration. I did, but I also asked for them to give us an org chart that shows the current configuration as well as what they're hiring or what they're recruiting for. I didn't just question, I actually want to see the org chart, the vacancies, the roles, responsibilities, and where they're recruiting. A little more than question.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman, I move we accept the minutes as presented with the amendment that Johnson, an organization chart being required for the finance department.
you want to suggest
A
some?
second. That's it. Ed got it.
Is that okay, the language is all right?
Greg's got it.
Is a motion by Ed Lombard, or second?
Second.
Second by John Goggin. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, not opposed, those minutes are approved. All right, we'll go right to the subject of this meeting. Craig?
Yep.
Craig, do we, in the past, we've had a representative from the auditor.
Correct.
Are we going to have that?
For the town council meeting, we are attempting to work that up. So the auditors will come to the town council and present.
We've had them at our meeting. We're hoping we might.
I really think it's appropriate to have the auditor here with us, so at the audit committee meeting, we're the ones going to recommend transmitting the audit to the town council. It hasn't been transmitted yet, has it, formally, officially?
No, it's in the same version that you've seen.
I think this is out of the ordinary. We ordinarily have the auditor here presenting the audit and answering questions from the audit committee. I think the council would benefit from that, and I think the council expects it to happen. So this is a little departure from our ordinary procedure. But anyhow, be that as it may, Mr. Chairman, it is what it is, as they say, right?
Oh, yeah, I was hopeful that we would have, Craig. But apparently we're not going to. What I suggest is that you move ahead and give us what you'd like to point out, and we ask questions. We can, gentlemen, ask questions as we go along.
And obviously, any questions that you gentlemen have that I can't answer or that are meant for the auditors, I will coordinate the answers from the auditors and get those directly to you. I apologize that we weren't able to coordinate to have them here today. As I said last week, there's a lot of moving parts in the town's finance department. You have an audit starting with one finance director, a second finance director during the majority of the audit process, and then I step in a couple months ago to attempt to close out and finalize the audit. Not the most efficient way that any organization wants it to go, and obviously you saw the run of that last week in reviewing a draft financial statement that didn't include all of the pages and information that you would want to see. So I come back this week and once again kind of fall on the sword with that. We did, hopefully as you saw in the information given to you, work to produce a complete final draft with the auditors last week, with the last piece of receiving the attorney letter. And as Mr. Steele pointed out before the meeting started, there were more than one number that was different. I know that we'll call it version 1, version 2, and this being version 3. The only difference between the first versions that you saw was that $14,000 cash number that changed. And in spending some time looking into that, that was due to former finance director Bob Lang, working with the auditors to correct a potential adjustment that the auditors had wrong. So it was incorrect on the version 1. It was actually correct on the version that you were looking at last week to increase cash by $14,000. There was an account that the town had closed and simply transferred the money into an operating account, but those funds were designated for the Mound House. And so the auditors had proposed proposed an adjustment to reduce cash by $14,000, but that was not the case. So it's correctly stated in these versions as well, or this version as well, to match what you saw last week. But in addition to that, in reconciling the audit adjustments to the town's financials, we discovered that there were additional adjustments that the auditors had proposed that were incorrect. They were in fact duplicating a number of year-end accruals. And so how I'd mentioned to you, there were 33 audit adjustments, of which 27 were proposed by the town. Because of that, there were a number of adjustments that we were, making sure were made, and then we had to reconcile to the audited figures. And then, we were moving on with the new fiscal year and continuing business. And we realized that the auditors proposed an adjustment that we had already made. And that came out as we were reconciling, back to the audit. We brought that up to the auditor's attention. Actually, Assistant Finance Director Cheryl Manning brought that up to the auditor's attention. They agreed that they were mistaken by that audit adjustment, eliminated that adjustment, and therefore we had an additional change to the audited financials that you see in front of you.
I'm surprised you didn't show up.
What's that?
Doesn't surprise you they didn't show up today.
That could be part of it. I think they may have read the minutes about your question to me last week on what would I give them on a score of 1 to 10. So it was not, not the smoothest audit, obviously, from our standpoint or theirs. Anytime that you have that many audit adjustments, even with the majority of them coming from us to them, it's constantly moving. So I'm pleased to say that the draft audit you see in front of you, is in its final version. We have reconciled it completely. As I said last week, and you can see it, it is an unmodified, unqualified opinion, clean opinion, if you will. And in it, it does contain those two findings that I talked about last week. One of them purely has to do with GAAP accounting versus budgetary accounting, where the town was keeping the books for the water and utility stormwater funds on the budgetary basis of accounting. Those should be kept on full accrual. That was one finding, and then the second finding was due to some additional payables discovered by the auditors in their search for unrecorded liabilities. We agreed with those. We have instituted processes to make sure that that doesn't continue. And so those are the only findings. That's what we responded to. And as far as the draft you see in front of you, that's it. Your point, Mr. Goggin, about the positions, I do have an organization chart, and
Thank you.
you see in this organization chart, right now there is only one position, the finance director position, that is formally advertised on the town's website. I don't know if we've received any resumes or candidates yet. That's a fairly new posting there.
All these other items are filled?
All those positions in black are existing positions, but as the town manager mentioned last week, we're open to finding the right people to fill the roles. But right now, there's no open roles, no additional currently advertising for. I wouldn't expect any.
So
in the
every
short
item
term.
on here, there's a body sitting in.
There's a body sitting upstairs.
Who's
or
the budget
here.
manager?
That's Sherry, who you met last week, Ms. Russ.
Harry,
The one that got hired just recently?
Right, she's a recent new addition over the last probably 3 weeks.
who's the assistant finance director?
Young lady right here.
That's Cheryl Manning.
Cheryl?
Yeah, Cheryl's been with the town for 4 years, almost 4 years now.
Senior accountant, just one?
Senior accountant, just one, Angie Marson.
And accounts payable,
Accounts payable, April Perkins,
just one person?
just one person, correct. And over the past, I don't know, probably 4 months since I've been here, we've tweaked some of the procedures. There was a lot on April Perkins's plate as the accounts payable individual, and therefore we've put some of the onus on the directors, the assistant directors in that process. So rather than overloading one person in the finance department, we've kind of spread it out amongst the resources that already existed down here.
And administrative assistant, just one?
Yes, Floor Lemming.
Craig, is there anticipation that additional staff will be hired? Because it seemed like last week there was conversation about having a
I think
supervisor team.
last week, everything was on the table. Obviously it was like I said, a better audit than the previous year, not still up to the standards that we'd seen before. I think if anything, the town manager is open to adding additional resources as we get ready for the audit. And, so we might need to add some administrative help. Even if we do hire a full-time or part-time finance director, I said that I'd remain in some capacity, on a consultative basis to help get through the audit, help get prepared for the audit and through the audit in future years. So I think that's probably makes the most sense, but there's a couple new bodies there, and I think if anything, the town we need some time with all of those individuals working together to get on the same page.
Oh, I mean, my own personal opinion is that the priority ought to be in finding a finance director and let the finance director decide on what he needs in terms of staff instead of the town manager who's got other responsibilities and has another perspective. But
Absolutely
the finance
right.
director will have the perspective should have the perspective we're looking for.
Absolutely right. Most organizations that I work with, if they're hiring for a director type position like that, they make it that person's call. That person comes in, evaluates the team that they have, and then they decide, do we need more people? Do we need less people? Do we need to change the people that we have
Exactly,
here?
because these audit findings, I think both of them are, to some extent, a reflection of maybe not a broad enough provision of what's going on, or maybe not a sufficient knowledge of what's required, which the finance director should have and should be imparting to the staff, particularly with the one with respect to using GAAP instead of the budgetary basis for
I don't disagree.
the proprietary funds. And that, to me, was a very important finding, one that didn't surprise me, by the way, because of the difficulty we've had. And maybe I'm jumping ahead here, Mr. Chairman, but because of the difficulty we've had in getting good information on how much what the borrowings have been from the revolving fund and what the outstanding debt is and so forth. We were getting some stuff from them, from Lang and others on the series of draws, but that wasn't what we were looking for. We're looking for the bottom line. Now, how much have we borrowed? How much is still owing? I hope we can do that now. I hope we can prepare such information and make it a routine, not have the finance staff go through gyrations to get something which to me is just fundamental.
The issue wasn't there was some conversation at the last meeting, at least inference that it was a GASB issue, but it was really GAAP versus accrual. So,
Well, it was GAAP versus budgetary accounting. So, in the budgetary accounting basis, if you receive a loan, you almost record it as revenue rather than a liability, and that's how it was recorded on the books as revenue, and we had to move it to a liability.
Right.
So it's
that would have been the same situation in a private company purview, not just public company. I thought one comment was we have a lot of people with public company experience, so maybe they missed that, but that didn't really pertain on this issue.
Right.
Okay.
I'll ask you, because I'm going to follow up ahead on my notes to talk about this finance director and that, but I'll hold that till the end or until you finish. I don't want to stop you or going through the report unless you're finished with it.
Well, I think I was going to point out the highlights of the report.
I have one, just if I could ask. Finance director, it's being advertised now.
Look it up today. Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
and is it going to be full-time or part-time?
It's advertised as a full-time position, although as the manager said last week, if a candidate comes in with good credentials and they say they can only work part-time, it very well will work that way.
I don't think it will work that way. We've got this is not the first auditor that we've had trouble with an audit on. This is 3 years running. We've gone through 2 different auditors, each time it comes back to a lack of oversight, in my opinion, a lack of oversight on the finance office, whether Robert was there, Walter was there. I know Cheryl does a lot of work in there. I've been up there with them, and they're pulled in 10 different directions. I truly believe they need a full-time director to go in there, get that place organized, get it straightened out. I mean, we criticized this auditor, we gave him a 6, but this is the second audit team we've had in there in 3 years that have had the same problems with town staff and the operations here. So I think it's a full-time position. And last week, when the woman, I forgot her name now, when the budget manager, she described herself, she was talking about writing procedures and training. I didn't hear her talk about what she was going to do as budget manager. I'm not even sure what that role means in this situation here. And she didn't describe that role. So I without a full-time director, someone in here that's straightening the place out, giving them the resources they need, giving them the training they need, I think we're going to be sitting here again next year with the exact same problem we have this year, that we're going to hear, well, we had staff changeover and people were learning and we're going, and that'd be 4 years running. I mean, you know, that's kind of becoming a pattern here that I don't think is acceptable for the council.
Craig, will you stay involved then with the town until that person is hired?
I will try to. I mean, I've told the town manager that, you know, this is a project basis, you know, and your point, whether it's a part-time or, you know, hopefully a full-time individual, I think the importance is, you know, being here to oversee and guide and interact with the directors and Roger and all of that. Unfortunately, I don't have the capacity to provide that. I wish I could. So in some capacity, yes, I'll continue. But in that interim finance director role that I think the town needs, it's not going to be probably as successful as what you're looking for.
Well said, John. I think we share your sentiments too, and I know I do.
Can I chime in? You know,
Yeah.
one of the first things, and I think I mentioned this last week, I came in and it was kind of do what that director does of assess the people, evaluate the procedures, talk to the directors, hear what they're lacking on the information that they're, you know, getting or not getting. And early on, I realized that Cheryl Manning here was, you know, putting out a lot of fires. You know, she was getting into the weeds when she should have been a lot more high level. And that's what we've been working towards, is to, you know, pull her back and get her more analytical rather than doing a lot of the minutia, you know, day-to-day work. So, you know, I know we're moving in the right direction, but absolutely, your point's well taken.
And I've worked with Cheryl before, and I'm not criticizing their skills. There is no one that's riding the ship in there right now that's giving them the right roles and responsibilities and latitudes to do the job that they're supposed to be doing, not the ones they have to do to cover up. I mean, to cover up like a cover-up, but to fill in the gaps. I corrected that, right?
Break that from the minutes there. Duly noted. So in getting back to the report, you know, the highlights, I mentioned the changes, the unqualified or unmodified opinion, the findings that were in there. As far as the financial performance, you know, everything was similar to years in the past, except for the COVID-related impact, and the increase in the water rates had a little bit of a effect to kind of hold off a lot of the negative impact that COVID would have had on the town. So I think moving forward, it's more of a process to make sure. Actually, Cheryl and I had a conversation this morning about, you know, getting ready for next year's audit and having a procedure in place to make sure that, you know, financials are being analyzed on a monthly basis, provided to you on a monthly basis, so that, you know, we're not in this situation next year, regardless of whoever's at the helm.
Mentioned previously there were like 27 adjustments proposed by the town.
Right.
That seems extraordinary to me. I spent part of my career auditing manufacturing companies, and our preference was hand us a trial balance you think is perfect. Now, none of them ever were, but hand me one, not that you got 27 entries for me to post, but hand me one that's already got all this.
I completely agree. Cheryl, I can let you answer this. I think Roger mentioned it last week that we gave the auditors the option where we said, listen, you guys are chomping at the bit to come in and begin the audit. We know we're not ready, but we know, what changes need to be made. Would you like, a trial balance right now, knowing that changes are coming, or do you want to wait and give us a couple weeks to make those changes and then come in at that time and start the audit? They chose to come in early and get a trial balance that was not complete. I mentioned I'm an auditor. If that was me, I say I'm holding off until it's as perfect as can be. So I think that was, that's one of the reasons why I lowered them down on my scale a little bit. I thought that was not a good decision on their part. It just, it proved that we needed to. He actually found a mistake in their numbers, coming back to us. So
Well, it seemed like that sort of prolonged the audit, which we've all complained about.
Definitely did.
Well, that seemed like a large number to me too. And could you generally characterize what are the nature of the adjustments, basically?
What are they? Majority of them. There were some, prepaids weren't adjusted, so we adjusted some prepaid accounts. The benefits, deferred outflow for benefits, we had an adjustment. We had some accruals, accrued wages, some things like, when we close a month down, it's not going to be, full accrual every month in and out. But obviously for the year-end audit, we're going to make those adjustments. Loans, some adjustments to the loans. It's really more of a balance sheet, capitalizing some things that may have been expensed as we're, going through and checking based on our capitalization policy, just doing the things that the auditors would typically do before they get there.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
I note, Craig, on the 2001 basic finding, it says that as such, capital outlays should be capitalized and depreciated. Yes. And I guess the use of the word should just raises a question in my mind. Does this statement, have they been capitalized appropriately in this financial statement?
Yes.
So this term should.
Must. I mean, it's for that fund, must.
We're required to be capitalized or something, yeah, something like, but should sounds prospective, but it's already been done, right?
It's already been done. And that's the sense of the unmodified, unqualified opinion is there's nothing that, these numbers should not be changed, or there's nothing that should be in here that isn't, or isn't here that shouldn't be.
Right,
So
they
they're
said that,
materially
that's why I
correct.
questioned the use of the word. So could you point me to something, some accumulation in here that where I can look at how much we've borrowed from the revolving fund for each stormwater and water, how much has been repaid?
So we have the total of the 31,000, and I would like to see a breakdown of that as well.
Page 19.
19? The 52 million.
Notes payable.
Yeah, the notes payable, and then if you look at the associated page, 34 shows,
34?
34 shows the note describing the makeup of that. 34, and I think it goes on to 35.
Oh,
Showing additional borrowings this year of that, 10,795,000.
where are you? Page,
34. You see under
Oh.
additions.
so if I can, so we have, we borrowed, as of right now, we have borrowed $31,668,000 from, 668 from the revolving fund.
Correct.
It's split between,
That's not correct.
As of the end of September?
Correct. We have 720,000, a note to Lee County. It's included in those numbers, so you need to pull that out.
Well, the 31,668 is the state revolving fund, the 720 is above it.
yeah, the 720's there, Jim, just above it.
Yeah, above it, but if you go back to page 19, they're combined.
Right.
I'll get into that in a minute, because I do have a correction that needs to be made.
Okay.
Oh, I see, 31. Well, okay, with that caveat, where's the breakdown between, on this 31.7 million, between water and storm, and water?
Page 19.
Yeah, that's probably on the page 19. Oh, sorry.
Okay, so page 19 shows 22 water, 8.9 or 9 million roughly stormwater. Is it 9 million,
I'm sorry, 19, yes, 19.
say again?
Page 19?
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Is the 9 million the total amount we have borrowed from the state revolving fund? It seems awful low.
The stormwater?
Yes, sir,
That's what this report says, yeah.
that's it. Oh, again?
As of the end of September, and,
I
yeah, Mr. Steele
understand.
said we're not done.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But we're not done with the project, I understand. Is that what you're saying? Well, yeah, sure, we have, I just think that still sounds low to me, but we've got so much work done. Let me ask something, a question I should know the answer to, but is all the stormwater work being done and paid for by the town, or is some of that part of the Estero Boulevard project?
I know the answer to that.
All the stormwater expense is being paid by the town. It did receive a grant to cover some of the cost. State. That's the town's liability, not the county's.
It was only $1 million, though, wasn't it, the grant?
I think it was less than that.
I saw a $1 million figure here in a minute, so aside from that,
500,000.
500,000.
500,000. Aside from that million, roughly, all of the stormwater work, well, including that, I guess, is being paid for by the town. Okay.
Ed,
Yes, sir.
now, the stormwater work on Estero is being paid for by Lee County. Where it goes down the side streets of the town, that stormwater work is being paid for by the town.
It's all being paid for by the town.
No,
No, he said.
the stormwater work on Estero
Yeah,
is being paid for by Lee County.
by the county. Well, that was my question.
Well, that's why I came in to clarify it.
I
Want to
thought-
make sure
yeah,
it's
I
clear too.
appreciate that. But so we have we have a disagreement here? You said
No.
it was.
I said I wasn't aware.
Okay, I
All
got
right,
you.
so just so the public who's watching this is clear, stormwater work on Estero Boulevard is being paid for by Lee County. Stormwater work on the side streets is being paid for by the town.
Gotcha.
Wastewater work on Estero Boulevard is being paid for by Lee County.
Funny, yeah.
So wastewater work where needed on the side streets is being paid for by the town, but being reimbursed by Lee County. All the water work, whether it's on Estero Boulevard or on the side streets, is being paid for by the town.
Although what's negative?
Water.
Water
You have three elements. You have stormwater, you have wastewater, and you have water.
Right. So when you did the rate study, then you obviously didn't include the stormwater work being financed by the county.
We did include that.
That
Did the
mean-
rate study. They increased the stormwater rate from $19.98 per month, $25.98 per month, starting in December of 2020. That increase was due to the additional work that was going to be required for stormwater.
Correct.
1998 would not have been sufficient to cover that work.
That's correct. What happened was the original amount of work on the side streets was, in the first grouping of work, was about 16 streets. And that was paid for under that initial allotment and exercise that came out with 1998. The Phase 2, Part 1, and Phase 2, Part 2, which is in the downtown area, and the next 15 streets that we are going to do, which we call the Tier 1 or hot streets, those streets with the worst flooding, left in terms of priority. That's why we had to increase the rates.
That is correct. The town council authorized additional streets to be covered by stormwater. But that increase in number of streets, the fee had to be increased from 1998. If they had not added any additional streets, 1998 would have worked. Since they added several more streets, the fee had to be increased.
That sounds like a good thing. For the time being, Mr. Chairman, I'll
Okay. All right, well, that was
Mr. Fuller.
helpful. Was, all right. Greg?
That was primarily it, talking about, where we were. The findings, I think, was the last bit of it, and Mr. Steele, I think you had mentioned you had a. Yeah,
Yes.
Good term.
Looking at all these changes, numbers changed on 15 pages. Smallest change was $506. The largest change was $218,357. None of those are material. But it's not a biggie that they were changed, not material. However, there is, I think, one correction that needs to be made. If you look at page 50,
50?
5-0?
50. Note number 6. The town had $31,668,870 in state revolving fund loans outstanding as of September 30th, 2020.
number 5.
Note number 5. $31,668,870 in state revolving loans outstanding. I think that is incorrect. Not a material difference.
Matching up to that amount on page 34.
But if you look at page 19, for notes payable within 1 year, $918,712. That also includes $180,000 in that separate note that's not part of the state revolving loan fund. 918,712 includes $180,000 to Lee County and interest of $13,032. In the remaining years, there's total interest due to Lee County is $32,530. They failed to decrease that from the $31,668,870. I think that number should be $31,668,870, because the number up above in Note 5 includes the interest that's due to Lee County. That's not part of the state revolving loan
Is
fund.
that 32,000?
32,580. That number in Note 5, I think, should be 31,668,870. Does
Well, that's what
not.
it is.
That's what it is.
No, it should be 31,636,290.
That's the 32,000.
A difference of 32,500, because that's the interest in the current year and next 3 years that's due to Lee County. But it should not be part of the state revolving loan fund. Just a ticky little change, and it's not material.
How much has been repaid to the revolving fund from the loans we made?
Past year is about 863,000. Over time, I don't know.
Basically, I think we're in our second year of repaying the first loan. So,
This year,
this year,
21 years, so, okay.
21 years. So good news, if you will, is we've had about 3 years of float on average on these loans, which of course is to the town's advantage.
I guess that's good news.
I mean, it's good that, as we spoke at your last meeting, it's good that we're getting old contract prices, and rather than the state issuing new loans for every tranche of new money, they're adding it on to the other loans, which then pushes out the repayment dates. And at the end of the day, all that, I believe, helped us, and because there hasn't been a huge fluctuation in the interest rate, any fluctuation has been to our advantage, from 1.5% to less than 1%. It's all been to the town's benefit financially in terms of, now, yeah, if you look at purely, well, when will we be done paying it off? Yes, because we're pushing out the start date, the end date will be that much further out. But if you look at the actual cost, it's advantageous.
Roger, real quick, sir, 31 million, now, Walter, before he left, had talked about putting together a request for another 20 million. That's all I remember him saying, and he was gonna talk about it at the next meeting, and the next meeting never happened with Walter. But there was another 20 million he was looking to put together loan money on?
So we have amended our loan. I think he may have misstated that. Okay, we have amended our loan, and there's actually, talked about it at your last meeting, to add in the next grouping of work. And as we explained, that our total package, and this goes back to Jim's worksheets going back, the water piece originally was going to be 40 million and change, and the stormwater piece was going to be 20 million change. So the overall package that was originally contemplated was about $60 million worth of work.
Much? 6-0?
60, sir. So, we have to be careful, and is that when we say 20 million, is it 20 million of new financing, or is it $20 million of work that's contemplated in existing financing? The fact of the matter is that, in all likelihood, if we got to the day where the state revolving fund was not available, or they thought that because they review our financials as well, they thought that our rate structure and not repay that, they wouldn't give us a loan. So it's being checked on both sides. So I don't know. I didn't hear Walter's direct comment, so I really don't know the context. But I do know that as we add cases, and we're careful, we don't go to the council and say, let's do all this. Even with the original 16 streets, we did 8 and 8, just to be sure that we're in good standing with the first 8 before we started on the second 8. And then when we completed those 16 streets, and we did phase 2, part 2, and part 1, made sure we were good standing with those. Now we're talking about moving into the next 15 streets, and those will probably be divided into 2 or 3 sections. We're trying to sort of walk through this, not run through it, just to be sure that we're in good financial shape from our own analysis internally, external auditors' analysis, as well as the state's analysis, since they're the ones loaning us the money.
So, I get all that. And the question is, he was talking about having to get some additional funding this year, additional loans this year. Is that still something that's being looked at?
I don't believe so. I believe we've gotten everything we need to get us through 21 and 22.
Thank you.
You think you can get through this year without the additional need, or the need for additional funds from the revolving fund?
Asking for additional loans. I think we have capacity within the existing loans to get us through this year and next year.
I was just clarifying, because I remember him saying about $20 million additional loans. I understand the 60 million. I just didn't understand what the 20 million and where that stood.
Yeah, it's inside that, though, just to be clear.
Well, we're running out of time if this project's going to be finished by the end of the year, but which,
Okay.
That's Estero Boulevard, not the total project.
not the
Not the
storm.
site.
Yeah, just to be clear again, our work, the town's work on Estero Boulevard was completed 6 to 9 months ago. Lee County's still doing their work on Estero Boulevard. And they're hoping to be done by the end of the calendar year. And the latest indication is they'll be close, but they may not make it.
It'll be what, Roger?
They'll be close, but they may not make it.
And that's their work. What about the balance of the work? Jim says it's going to extend beyond that.
Their work? I didn't hear Jim's comment.
Side streets.
Well, our side street work will probably be ongoing for a minimum of 5 more years.
How long? When?
5.
On the outfall sewers.
On the side streets, we have the 15 hot streets to do. They're in design now. And we're finishing phase 2, part 1, and phase 2, part 2, while we're waiting for those 15 side streets to be designed and permitted. Permitting has to be done by the state and by the Army Corps of Engineers. And the Army Corps of Engineers, for those of you who may not be aware, has a very significant lead time for permits.
I was going to ask, and I think Roger already answered part of this, but with regard to submission of the financials to the state, which, thank you for the clarification, but beyond that, is there anything in here with regard to particular 2 material weaknesses that will cause us any impact on our ability to borrow from the state, or do they get the auditor's letter, or do they just get the report, or how does that work?
No, they get everything with this.
Okay,
But the short answer to your question is no, it won't adversely affect us.
okay, good.
They look at, frankly, a very, very narrow picture. They look at what our rate is, what our EDUs are, how much money those are spinning off. And they have a coverage factor of 15%. So if our, whatever our debt service is going to wind up being, they look at our rates and see that it would generate enough to pay that plus 15% if needed. If for some reason there was a drop off.
Thank you.
Report.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
I move that we accept the audit as presented.
Second.
any further discussion?
Question, does it require an adjustment?
It's not material.
Oh, okay.
It doesn't make hardly
Okay.
any difference.
We'll make a note to the auditors. and, yeah.
On the blue sheet, Jim.
Second.
Any further comments? Well, I had some, but they're pretty minor. I think I'll pass on them. All right, I'll call a question. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? None opposed? Unanimously approved. Roger, before you came in, we expressed some concern that we didn't have the auditor present, as we have had in the past. We're hoping to meet with a representative of the auditor. I would hope that in the future, when we review the audit, we do have a representative from the auditor present.
We will, in our engagement letter for next year, we will state that as a requirement.
Might be in their best interest because I believe their contract will be coming up again, and there's been comments made about the quality of their audit. There's a consideration about, was it the town, was it the auditor, how did they get along? Maybe in their best interest to give us their view of how the audit went.
We have no objection to them being here and sharing their thoughts about how the town interfaces with.
Jim?
The years I've been on the audit committee, this is the first time that I ever recall they did not show up or were hooked up by phone.
Yeah.
In the past, they've been hooked up by phone and answered questions, but this is the first time they're not even here in any order. And I had another comment. I think their contract runs out this year.
One more year.
They have one more year.
We're,
One more year after the current year?
No,
This is their
September
final
of
year.
2021 is the last in their.
All right.
they're gonna be doing the 21 audit also?
Well, if it's
We don't have an
not
opportunity to-
appropriate to talk about auditors, at some point will it be appropriate to talk about there are expectations or our requirements as far as when they come in, how fast they proceed?
I think absolutely. I think you should be meeting with them prior to the audit to voice those expectations.
I was going to have the same comment. Could we get just for lack of a better term, like an audit schedule? So we've got something to manage also for expectations.
We need to hold them accountable, but they need to hold us accountable, and I think that makes a lot of sense.
We execute an engagement letter with them, even though we're under contract. So to the extent that there are any salient comments about them being present, at least at one of the meetings, or anything else you feel is appropriate, let us know, and we will include that as a requirement of the engagement letter.
I believe in the past, at least when Jim was here, Jim used to meet with them prior to that, but the committee never as a whole did. It may be time that we have them come in and set some broader expectations. Part of that letter would be part of it, Ron.
During the course of the audit, Jim would be with them.
Jim
But we always,
Rodwell.
Right.
but we always had them present. When the audit was presented to the audit committee, either present or by telephone. They were either here personally, in person, or by telephone.
We'll express that to them.
John?
I did appreciate John asking for this and you guys delivering. I think it's possible, and I know we're getting into a tough time of season, but we get on a regular cadence from a financial packet. I think that'd be helpful to the committee. It's been a while since we've seen anything.
I'm sorry, what was that?
The committee receiving a monthly financial packet with regard to town finances, whatever the most current is at the given time. Thank you.
Chairman, just as an aside, have you worked out, has it been worked out the way the selection advisory committee and the audit committee are going to work the next time when it comes to the selection of the auditor?
I'm not sure.
Because there was some
confusion
about that.
about this.
Yeah.
And I know that they had my termination date wrong, or whatever. They weren't lined up right, but that new ordinance went into effect and kind of got everything off whack.
Yeah, but the ordinance didn't change the statute. The statute says
Right.
that the audit committee will propose, will undertake the evaluation of auditors and make a recommendation to the
Oh, yeah.
municipality.
Oh, all right. I'm sorry. You're referring to the procedure there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the role of the selection audit, what was it called? The selection advisory committee or whatever, which seemed to me to be redundant and unnecessary.
Yeah. Amy Baker presented to us last year that go through a selection advisory committee. There's an ordinance. I forget the name of the ordinance, but at any rate, it's a general procedural ordinance which on bids requires a selection committee. And it's inconsistent with our ordinance.
And
which
statute,
gives
the state
us-
statute.
And the state statute. And I recommended that they exclude the audit committee from that ordinance, Roger, so that there's no confusion about that again in the future, although I guess,
I'm sorry, I'm not up to speed on this specific issue. Can you help me understand, was the issue that the audit committee was not the selection committee? Or
yeah,
was
they
it?
tried to intervene an additional committee in, add an additional committee as a selection committee.
Okay, so hearing what you're saying, here's what I think we should do, and I will recommend to town council, that the selection committee or the auditor is the audit advisory committee. We will not have a staff committee in addition to the audit advisory committee. You will be the selection committee.
Selection committee for the auditor will be the audit committee? What you're saying?
Yes,
That's what he's saying.
That's pretty much what the statute says. That's pretty much what's
Yeah.
required by the state of Florida.
yes.
The
I
statute
mean, you're
says
governed
that.
by that as far as I know.
I want to be clear, I don't,
There's another ordinance that says that when you take bids, you create this, you have this committee. What do you call this other?
it's a selection, it's a selection committee.
All right.
So if it was anything other than
And
the
they try
auditor,
to interject that into our procedure.
they're not, I don't believe they're inconsistent. So maybe last time it wasn't handled in the most efficient manner, but let me be clear. Normally, forget, if it wasn't the auditor, we would pick certain representatives, and typically when a committee is involved, we would have one member of the committee serve with town staff to be on the selection advisory committee. However, to the nature of the audit, to the importance of your involvement with the audit, rather than have a combination of staff and the audit committee, we will just have the audit committee serve as a selection advisory committee. You will still have a staff liaison who will help you through that process, but there will not be a non-voting member. The people who would cast the votes and rank the firms would be the audit advisory committee.
There was also something there, Roger, about the mayor serving as the chairman. Some language about that
Yeah.
that we might look into.
Okay, well, I haven't seen that, but I'll check into it. Thank you, John.
Conflict. Selection committee, because Karen has the, committee.
Well, I think the simple answer is to exclude the audit committee from that other ordinance. From the ordinance that requires the intervention of a,
Well, I think there has, here's the issue as I understand it, and if there's more to it than that, I'll be glad to listen to it, but as I understand it, it is, to rank the prospective firms who are being considered to be the town's auditor, some persons need to be part of the people who review their proposals, interview the firms, and do that ranking. As I'm suggesting to you, that there's no need for staff to be part of that process, other than to be the staff liaison, and the audit committee can serve as that group, and you could decide it could be all of you, it could be a subgroup of you, whatever you decide will be fine with us.
Chairman, I think that's really a good idea. I mean, we do need some support here, technical support, which we always had before. We never had the interjection of a committee, another committee by town ordinance, but we always had support in reviewing
Yeah.
these proposals and
Right.
presenting them to us and so forth. So I really think that's a very constructive suggestion.
Okay. I recommended a year ago that the town attorney look at this and eliminate the conflict one way or another.
Okay, I'll remind him if he hasn't done that, to do that again.
By the way, since you mentioned the town attorney, I remember last meeting, the audit was being held up because of an attorney's letter. But I haven't seen any evidence that there's been an attorney's letter. Is that something that just internal to this town, or?
No, what happens is just to be clear, that letter did come in. It didn't come in on Monday as we had hoped, but it came in a day or two after that. But what that letter does is give the town attorneys, provides a listing of all the pending lawsuits that the town is in and the potential exposure, so that the auditors can account for that. As you may recall, besides we have our legal budget broken into three parts. One is the actual fees paid monthly to the attorney. And we have a second part, which is basically a pool of money for litigation. It's approximately $200,000. And we have a third pot of money, which is a reserve, which is if we should have either of those two funds inadequate for some reason, a big lawsuit or whatever, and or if we have a judgment. So we're in pretty good shape. And don't forget, most of our liability type cases are handled on our behalf by the League of Cities, and we have an insurance policy through them as well.
I'd like to see a copy of that letter. I think we'd like to get a copy of that letter.
Look record, we can get it to you.
Yeah, well, usually submitted with the audit when we get the draft of the audit, but we have it. If you would, Craig.
Did I understand correctly, though, that we're going to be receiving periodic financial statements, monthly financial or quarterly, whatever it is?
Yes.
Does it really be helpful for us to have that during the course of the year?
Absolutely.
And the town council is also?
Yeah, you're going to get the same report, just so you understand. There's going to be one report. You're going to get a copy of it. Town council is going to get a copy of it, and it's going to be posted on the website. The public has a copy of it.
Will that be? Have you been getting them, Ray?
Not yet.
It's been months since we were told that you were going to be getting those
Yeah,
monthly.
because I think that was part of
Yeah.
that whatever document we drafted when we scuttled the investment policy, where we drafted an additional policy. and that
We'll
was-
put out
that was
the
part of it.
last report that we have today or tomorrow. Send it to you all. Just understand it's a work in progress, but we will be glad to send it to you.
You know, somewhere, I can't find it, but I seem to have read that there was some criticism that the wire transfer policy needed to be amended.
Yeah, that was in the prior year's audit.
but we
and
did that.
That is corrected, yeah, and that's
So
what
we
it
did
says.
that.
It was resolved as part of this year's audit.
It said it was resolved, though, Dan.
Oh,
In
okay,
that
it did
same
say it was
critique, it said
resolved, all
resolved,
right.
and it was resolved because,
Yeah, we approved that on last September.
Yeah.
Okay,
They acknowledge in this current audit that we reacted to that comment and resolved it.
okay, I missed that. I only saw the criticism, all right. All right, is there anything further on the audit, or any questions you'd like to ask of the staff or of our manager while we are of his presence? Okay. Members' items and comments?
Mr. Chairman, before I go, I just want to thank you all. I know this wasn't necessarily the smoothest process, and I appreciate the hard work that you did and your flexibility, so thank you.
Okay. How about the next meeting, gentlemen? What's your plans for the, Craig, do you see any necessity for a meeting in the foreseeable future?
From my standpoint, it'll be to provide you with those monthly financials that you've been asking for. That'd be the only thing coming from.
I would say that we should probably start convening in October-ish, November-ish, once we have the soft closing of the fiscal year. Start discussing where we are with you all then. I think that would be an appropriate point. And of course, if we're going to start working on drafting the RFP for the next auditor, of course, we'll have to start that process as well. The requirement. I want to emphasize.
Really good timing too, if you're going to be meeting with the audit firm to discuss their timeline and time frame and expectation.
The only thing I'd add is, as we start getting the financials, as Roger said, they're a work in progress, that we start to send our comments to you during the months of June, July, August, while we're not there. Comments to you, you can make the updates and what you think is relevant, just so we can start to refine those, even though we're not meeting.
How's that work, just procedural? If we have comments as an individual audit committee member, we copy everybody on the audit committee?
You can just send them directly. I mean, all of
Okay.
your
You
emails are
send
public
it to
record.
Craig.
But, yeah.
Craig will modify, do whatever, and let the
Make the
broader
adjustment.
group, but you can't communicate directly to the rest of us.
Right,
Individually.
Group text.
right, okay, all right. I just want to make sure I got it right.
Yeah, my vision would be a set of financials along with kind of a high-level executive summary to go to you. That's my vision.
We cannot take any action by email either. We can only communicate, as has been pointed out here, in a limited way. All right, is there anything else? I have one matter that I'd like to bring up. Gentlemen, you may have noticed that my physical condition is is not very good. My brain seems to be working all right, although there are some that would I'd question that. But I feel it's in our best interest that I step down as chairman, and I would. I'm doing that now, effective now. I'm resigning as your chairman. I've certainly enjoyed working with you, and I'm going to stay on the committee, and I'll stay on until the town finds a replacement for me, Ray. And in the meantime, in the capable hands of Ed Lombard, who is our vice chair, and I think that automatically he would become the chair, at least for the remainder of this year. We do this on an annual basis now, and Ed, I would like you to take over. And I think, though, that we ought to have a vice chair. In the event you're unable to attend a meeting or whatever, I would ask for nominations for that position.
Mr. Chairman, first of all, you're kind of irreplaceable as far as I'm concerned. You've been such a great chairman and a great member of the community, made so many contributions over the years, and we're all grateful for that service. I personally never aspired to be chairman of this committee or virtually any committee. I like staff work. I've always been a staff person. That's my experience. That's my predilection. I would, when you say through the end of the year, does that mean the fiscal year, which September 30th?
Yes.
Which would be okay because our next meeting isn't until October, right? So caveat, I would probably accept that. But I just want to reiterate that I'm not interested in being a full-time chairman. I like the committee, I like the assignment, I think we do important work, but I think I'm better in another chair rather than in that chair. And so whenever it comes time, I'm ready to vote for somebody else as chairman.
All right.
Chairman, I would nominate John Goggin to be vice chair.
No, as much as Ed doesn't want to be, double it. I currently serve as the chair of the Public Safety Committee, so that's my out right now. And in October, if I'm not that chair, I still have an out, then I'm not gonna do it. Thanks anyways, but, no, I'm serving as the chair of the Public Safety Committee, and until Ray tells me I'm not doing a good job there, but he actually told me that, but he kicks me out.
Chairman,
Once you nominate Cody, he's not here.
that's what I was gonna do. Nominate Dick Cody.
Well,
You can't elect.
Why don't we just
Jim,
hold
you're-
off till October?
Jim, you're one of our original members. I'd like to nominate you.
I like that idea. I second that.
Are there any other nominations? I nominate Jim Steele. Hearing no other nominations, you are now the vice chairman.
Thank you.
All right, thank you,
Acclamation.
gentlemen. And is there anybody have anything further? If not, I'll declare the meeting adjourned. It's 10:15, and enjoy the summer, and God bless all of you. Thank you so much.
Same to you, Dan.
Thank you.
Bye.
Gentlemen.
Yeah, Dan.